pages, it's sci-fi or fantasy, whatever genre you please. Join a book club, 'cause you won't read it on your own. Join a book club, so you'll be held accountable. It's just a means to an end, but you're doing it with your friends, so join the book club by DLC.
Hello, book clubbers. Ha! Sorry we missed you last week. It's been a minute. Hope you got together and danced on your own. If not, welcome back. Thanks for dancing in your seat. And thanks for being here. I'm Jeff Kanata. I'm with Lana Bashinsky. Hi, Lana.
Hello. I'll take the heat. It's my fault. But let me tell you, if you think I didn't make everybody in my surprise morning meeting dance to the intro theme song, you're wrong. We needed that energy, and we used it to get through the week, baby. And now we're here.
We're here, and we got your energy for the week this week. So excited to be back. So excited to be talking about chapters 10 and 11 of Midnight Tides. Some really juicy stuff happens in these chapters, so we're going to get to it shortly. But we always start the show with a non-spoiler topic so that if you're not caught up with the reading, you can still hang out with us and talk books a little bit. We got a cool one this week. This was posted on our YouTube comments, posted by Vasco Saraiva 9980. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Thank you for posting this. Vasco writes, hey, Jeff and Lana, listener from Portugal here. I smile every time a new episode shows up in my feed. And I have a topic for you. This came up during a Steven Erikson AMA on Reddit 12 years ago. And the question is this. Imagine you spend 25 years in solitary confinement, but you'll be allowed to bring 3 books with you. Which ones would you pick? I don't know what I did to earn solitary confinement, but I guess this is kind of the old, you're stranded on a desert island, a new twist, a kind of a darker twist. I don't know, actually, I don't know what's darker, solitary confinement or stranded on a desert island. Both not pleasant, I would assume. But he notes what Erikson claimed 12 years ago. Who knows if this has changed in the interim, but at least during this Ask Me Anything on Reddit 12 years ago, Steven Erikson chose the Iliad, George MacDonald Fraser's The Pirates, which is Pirates with a Y instead of an I, and going after Cacciato, I think it's called. Neither of those final 2 books I'm familiar with. Going After Cacciato is written by Tim O'Brien in the 80s, I believe, and is sort of a war, kind of a. Well, I'll read the description on Goodreads. It says this is the winner of the 1979 National Book Award, so not 80s, wrong there. 1979 National Book Award winner. In a blend of reality and fantasy, this novel tells the story of a young soldier who one day lays down his rifle and sets off on a quixotic journey from the jungles of Indochina to the streets of Paris. And The Pirates sounds like a book I actually really want to read. It's a comic. It's like funny. It's a tongue-in-cheek homage to the swashbucklers of yore. In these rollicking pages, you'll find tall ships and desert islands, possibly gallant adventurers and glamorous heroines, devilishly sinister cads and ghastly dungeons, improbably acrobatic duels, and hairbreadth escapes, and more plot twists than you can shake a rapier at.
Cool.
Sounds like a book I would really like.
I think I have heard of The Pirates before, but I don't know much about it. I think I've heard it on like people's favorite book lists in the past. So I haven't thought about this at all. Do you have like answers already?
The first thing that pops in mind. So like anything else, this is not what's your favorite book, right?
Yes.
This is, you're stuck with very small selection over a long period of time.
Yeah.
So that makes me want to get the most bang for my buck, right?
Uh-huh.
So the first thing that immediately leaps to my mind, and may very well be a cheat in some people's minds, is the complete works of William Shakespeare. I'm taking that.
Yeah.
Because infinitely rereadable, lots in there. I mean, it's one book because they publish it as a single volume.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge Shakespeare fan. I'd spend many years of my solitary confinement probably memorizing it. There's lots to do there.
Look, leave it to the gamers to think about how to min-max the experience. That's like the first thing I thought of. I'm like, what is a book that was like many books, but technically was like
Right.
one book?
Yeah.
I thought of Stephen King's The Dark Tower. It was released as many books, but if you've read any of the forewords, intended to be a single story.
Yeah.
So I would take all of The Dark Tower as one book.
Not bad.
And then I also think that like maybe just a book that I would like love a lot, that I love the characters in the world. I would say either the whole thing, or because I know what the other two books would be. And I don't know the specificity of them, but I know what they would be. But like, I think you need like one book that's like the mental detox. Lives of Lachlan Moore is another one that comes to mind, that I just love the characters so much and love the world so much that I would sort of live there, even though it's not a long read. But the other two, I would bring like 0 to 1,000 How to Be a Programmer. Like what's a self-help book that will let me?
Good. Yeah, like
I got all the time in the world. Exactly.
Yeah, how to meditate and not go crazy in solitary confinement over 25 years.
Yeah,
is that book? Can I get that book?
Like some philosophy book, so I can just be thinking.
I do think a philosophy book would be an excellent, like a really dense, like the history of modern philosophy or something. I don't know if that's even a book, but I'm sure it is. It's a massive text that you could really dive into.
Yeah.
That's strong.
Yeah.
That's strong.
A hard skill, a soft skill, and an escape. Those are my 3 books.
I like that. That's a really solid plan. I was going to ask you this, but it feels like you already answered it. I was going to ask you where you sit on bringing a book you had never read before.
I would want probably, I feel like for the escape book, it would be something that is familiar. It's like, oh, I'm going to bring this book. I heard it was great. And I read it. I'm like, oh, I hate it.
I know, right? It's a bummer.
But you also know me. I love tearing things apart. I'd spend all 25 years being like, here's why it's horrible. It would become
I'm reading it again. It's still bad.
or I leave as the biggest fan. It's me or the book.
One of us you come around on it in year 22. Yeah. Or you got 2 other books to spend your time with. And you're like, garbage book.
This one I can burn for warmth.
Yeah. I like the philosophy book idea. This might sound pandering, but man, I'd be tempted at this point, only halfway through, I'd be tempted to take the entire Malazan Book of the Fallen series.
I thought that same thing too, but I was like, that's playing to the audience.
I agree. It's a bit pandering, but like the goal would be stuff that you could reread and get new things out of. And to a certain extent, anything applies, right? You can read anything and get something else out of it. But I feel like the Malazan Book of the Fallen is particularly well suited to that. It holds up over multiple rereads, as we've heard from devoted fans who've told us so.
But in order for that to be like legal under the rules of this game we're playing, it needs to be released as one tome. It would be like,
can we get on that, please? Somebody just for my island,
book.
for my cell.
Does that have to be a physical book? Can it be a Kindle, aka all of them back to back to back? I'll take the long PDF.
Yeah. Can I get a charge port in my cell, please? The other ones, I'm tempted by this philosophy book idea. I would have to do some research to be like, please, my intake to the prison is in 2 weeks. I gotta get on Goodreads. But I thought maybe Infinite Jest, just because I love David Foster Wallace's writing, and that is a massive tome that like holds up to a lot of scrutiny. And that book might get annoying after several years of rereading. But what was the other thing I was thinking? I had another one. Yeah, just things that I feel like you could lose yourself in and
get something from.
Big, they're long, they're
Yeah.
I've never read the Iliad, and the fact that Erikson picked that, I'm like, maybe I should like bring a classic that I'd never, maybe War and Peace. I never read War and Peace.
Yeah.
Maybe I should bring War and Peace with me.
Well, that was the one the Iliad specifically is also not one I've ever read. And that was one that I thought, oh, maybe that would be like time to read it.
Yeah.
Because it's
Yeah.
it's an epic, right? It's one of the big
It's
boys.
the the
Of
Iliad and the
yore.
Odyssey. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the precursor to all the heroic fantasy, all heroic adventure tales. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, really great question. Thank you for sending to us. And if anybody out there has other ideas for great questions to start off the episode, please don't hesitate. You can post them on the YouTube as a comment. You can send it to us via email, dlcfeedback@gmail.com. Or you can post them in the Discord. Also, our Discord is 5x5 DLC on Discord. So love hearing from you and love getting those suggestions.
And as per always, we do read all these comments, and I would love to know what 3 books that you would bring to your years of torment. Hit us with it.
What crime had you committed to cause you 25 years of solitary confinement? All right, let's jump in to Midnight Tides, chapters 10 and 11. Spoilers starting now. Chapter 10, we start with our boy Tahal, my favorite character.
The best.
The best. And it's he's hanging out on the rooftop. He's got a bug made him a hat that's in the fire. They're burning. Just great.
It's so
Love
cute.
The details.
So cute. These like little quippy, the back and forth. Like I feel like Tahal's chapters are half like, just line by line by line by line. That's like 3-word sentences back and forth between like of these interactions. And when I see this page that's just the dialogue, I'm like, it's gonna be so good.
Ooblala Pung shows up and is not happy because those ladies are using him like a piece of meat.
Nobody sees him for him.
That's right.
They only see him for like him.
He just wants to be loved. Is that so wrong?
He wants to cuddle.
That's right. He's like, I'm not just my parts. You know what I'm saying?
I definitely highlighted this whole scene as like a thing. I'm like, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's so good.
It's so good.
It's so good. Tahal's like Bug kind of like half roasting Tahal for like not like getting girls, and him being like, you could not sympathize because it's not an issue you have. And he's like, exactly what?
Yeah, it's so good. He's like, you don't understand, Oblala. You're living the dream.
And then he's like, getting so fed up with Oblala being like, look, what does he say? He says something like, sympathy is for the small-membered.
Yeah,
and it's
so
like,
good. It's for the small-membered.
Beautiful.
Very funny. And then it's pouring down rain, and the rain hat is smoldering in the fire, and he's like, I gotta go out in the rain, and he just plucks it out of the fire and puts it on his head.
And it was like a fish hat, right? It was like leaves that were wrapped around rotting fish or something like that.
Straw, yeah. No, I think that's later. That's smoldering. The food.
Oh, that's the food.
I think that's the banana leaves that they eat later. But maybe you're right.
I think they're both, because later, whatever. I think they're both like banana leaves. But just being like, I got my stanky, smoldering fish hat, literally burning.
Yeah.
The image of this guy. I've got like my book crush on this idiot.
Yeah.
Love him. Love him.
At some point, we're gonna have to like cast our Tahals, like who's the perfect, because there's definitely like a Will Ferrell, but I feel like maybe like more like a Robert Downey Jr., like he's cool, but also a goofball, like a young Robert Downey Jr. works for me.
I think that's like a great casting. I can't quite picture his age, but like the person who I think could like, who maybe is like, has like a natural silliness to him, that I don't think he'd be a great casting, but the energy is kind of right. Is almost more like not in appearance, but in attitude, is like a Ryan Reynolds to me.
Oh yeah. No, that would work.
Doesn't look like him, but like has like this like quickness. But I think Robert Downey Jr. is actually a much better pull. That's the guy.
Love to hear everybody else's dream Tahal casting. But Ryan Reynolds is solid pick. Maybe a little too attractive, but
it doesn't look like him. I'm thinking about like the quippiness and like can switch between the seriousness. But that's why I think Robbie Downey Jr. is like this like great. It's like a great pull. Sorry.
Yeah.
Continue.
All right. Anyway, so Shirk shows up, and well, no, that's not true. They go to Shirk. They're going to find her, and she's been working. She's turned into a working girl, quite literally. A dream job for Shirkalali.
Yo, this building, the intensity.
Building.
Okay, this building, everything about it. That's like, okay, they show up. This executioner is walking out.
So funny.
That guy's gonna be like a guy later.
I don't know. That could have been just a one-off gag. It's funny.
A one-off gag of like the most serious, like grim visuals from, cartoon media.
Yeah.
This executioner walking out like, oh man, don't go in there kind of thing.
Yeah. Off to like sever some heads, just literally axe in hand. I imagine like the black hood over his head, just, hey, sorry, I had to stop off and go to the brothel before work. So funny.
So good.
Yeah. Anyway, they go in and the building, as you said, these banisters with boobs on them that they can't stop looking at.
They're like, stop looking at the banisters. Oh God. Okay, stop looking at the ceiling. Oh my God. There's like nowhere that they can look that they're not like kind of mesmerized by.
Yeah. And every time they say, it's so funny the way he writes it. Every time they say something that could be, a double entendre, it's like, stop looking at the banister. Oh yeah, sorry. It's so funny. And we meet a new character, another person with the perfect name, Madame Delisp. Delisp as a brothel madam, just perfect. The matron of the brothel. Tahal thinks they have to negotiate to get Shirk out of there, and the matron's like, no. I want her to leave.
Everybody's mad.
No one likes her. She's taking all the business. The Utulu is hungry.
I'll pay you to get her out.
Yeah.
This Utulu, this mojo, if you will. What a ridiculous. Sorry.
It's beautiful, but in hindsight, when we were joking, when we read that person's name and it was, Utulu, and we were joking about it, and then people were like, oh, wait until you find out what the Utulu is. I wish, in retrospect, we had tried to guess what the Utulu was.
Oh my God.
To see how far away from what it actually is. With no universe where we would have been able to guess that.
There's no universe where I ever would have been able to just like come up with that.
If I had come up with that, you would have been worried about me.
Can you imagine? You're like, oh, maybe it's like an instrument. And I'm like, okay, picture this. You're dead, but you want to bang, right? Like, oh, all right. Woo, we're learning about each other today, baby.
Amazing. Just like...
Now I want to like see, this is what I'm worried about though. Like if we're gonna like see everybody's gonna start changing their usernames to things or something like that, and then we're gonna try and guess them, and then I'm worried somebody's gonna be like, no, it's this.
Yeah,
and then we'll spoil it.
No spoilers.
No spoilies.
Yes. So he pitches the idea. Tahal pitches the idea to Shirk of meeting Ublala. He's like, I got the perfect match made in heaven here. I can put these two together, get these two lovebirds together. It's like the scene in Ghostbusters. He's like, you got the gatekeeper, I got the keymaster. We definitely got to get these two in the same room. So she's up for that idea and is willing to leave and is like, send my money to Tahal's house. You owe me. I've been making cash money here. And she's evidently has an idea of how to spend it, although we don't know what that will be.
Mm-hmm. It makes me laugh because like the reason that they're on this mission is to try and turn no money into lots of money. And I'm like, couldn't you just like partner?
Yeah. Shirk's got that business down.
Tahal, get the marketing out there. Done. Easy.
Yeah.
But you know what? No, continue crimes.
Yeah. Continue crimes. So then Tahal walks over to the Azath Tower and meets up with Kettle, the little creepy undead girl who's been
The murder
feeding
baby.
bodies to the tower. And she says some more disturbing stuff about how. Yeah, go ahead.
She's like, so, it is that like perfect little horror twist where it's like a cute kid, but she's a little zombie who's been killing people. But she's like, here's some things. Oh, I don't like what's down there. And like in a previous chapter know that like the people who are like, she mentions like some of the people down there seem fine, some are quiet, one person is nice to me, but there's a bunch of them that say they're gonna come out and they're gonna get me kind of thing. But we know that those are the Toblakai from the previous chapter, right?
Yes, I think that's what we're supposed to know.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're like, she's like touching on it, and every single time she's like, yeah, the tower's like sick.
Well,
it's like
she
dying.
also says, doesn't she also say like there's one person in particular who's super bad and wants out, and that's not good?
I thought there was like the group of people that were like the very bad, and then one person in particular
keeps promising her things, like tells her, I'll make you the empress, and Tail's like, don't listen to that one.
I think that's the one that we assume is bad, but she's like, they seem nicer than the other 5.
Yeah, they want to help me. They want to make me the empress if I let them out. She also asks Tahal if he's had any dreams about dragons.
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting.
Some
well, just dangling.
Uranus synergy, kind of. Yeah.
So, and she talks about this person that's come and been trying to paint her or draw her. And she's like, maybe I'll go murder him or her.
Do you have any idea what the painter is?
I don't.
We saw that painter in that one book.
Yeah.
With
I don't think
his
it's the same painter.
Frog friend? Was it a frog?
That would be interesting. That would be interesting if that's the reference. I mean, you're right. It's the only other painter we've met. I don't know. Am I misremembering this? Didn't Tahal say someone's been painting him on the rooftop also?
You might be right.
Or am I crazy about that? I don't know. Anyway, interesting little tidbit where she's just like, maybe I'll murder the painter.
Mm-hmm.
All right, then we're hanging out with Brys again, Brys Benedict, who goes to he's like hanging out with Turudal Brizad, and watching the fighters be trained, and he's kind of just musing about military service, and it's not like it was when I was back there.
Yeah,
and the good old days.
He's the consort.
Yes. In a love triangle of sorts
with the chancellor and the queen.
Yeah, they're both in love with him, and there's this interesting exchange where Turudal basically espouses the same philosophy that we heard the crippled god say, which is like peace is not good.
Yeah,
peace. People don't like peace. People strive for discord. They don't want to be in a peaceful time. And Brys is like, what? I don't.
As somebody who's like fights people for living, yeah, they do.
He's like, I don't get what you're saying, dude. Yeah. He's like, it's literally, it's like, they go back and forth. It's so funny. They go back and forth, and the Brys is like, yeah, I still don't understand your premise, but all right. Agree to disagree, I guess.
Weird guy.
Yeah. But he's like trying to figure out this feud that's happening.
Well, I also like that he's like, I have like all of these skills, and it sucks that this guy's skill is like, do you think I'm hot or not?
Yeah. At least I got something that's not going to go away with when I get older. He's like, this guy's going to age out of his beauty, and then what's he got?
Yeah.
And so he goes back home. Brys goes back home, and he's like, oh, spies have been in my room again. That happens all the time.
I love it. He's like, spies have been in my room, so careless. And he like turns the dagger the right way. And he's like, but that's not what the spy did. The spy who was spying on the spy turned the dagger so that I would know there's the spy here.
So funny. Yeah. And it's just like, that's daily life. just being spied on by multiple layers of spies.
Just the intrigue of the palace. Royal living.
So then he goes to visit Kuru Khan, the Seda, and or Sita, I guess. And I love this scene too. I love Kuru Khan. Kuru Khan's like visiting from another novel almost. He's like, he's like, I'm checking like, gravity and the Earth is round. Not Earth, but the planet is round, and like, this is awesome stuff. And everybody's like, we're in a fantasy novel, bro.
He's like, I came up here because it was important for me to check this. And he's like, oh yeah, we're like your assistants. And he's like, they thought it was important that I kept checking things. And the visions I'm getting, because the blood is rushing to my head, are important. And they knew that. And that's why they left. And he's like, great. Let's get you down, buddy.
He's hanging upside down, just like tripping balls because of he's just like been upside down for too long, you know? And he's like, you don't understand. The planet is round. He's like, yeah, people sailed around it. They circumnavigated the planet already. He's like, yes, we know that from a hard experience, but I want to prove it theoretically. So funny.
I forgot that was it. It's like, we already know that this thing
exists. They literally have experiential evidence. We recorded the circumnavigation of the planet. He's like, yes, but on a theoretical level, we haven't proved it. So funny.
And I just love Brys's subtle, like, oh, I'm going to go find your helpers or their students or whatever. And he's like, he says something like, go easy on him. He goes, oh, they're not going to forget about me in the near future. It's just like, oh, you go get him. I don't know what he's going to do, but
yeah, I'm going to make them, I'm going to punish him a little bit for leaving you alone.
Yeah.
I love Kuru Khan because he reminds me of an archetype that I always love in real life. I don't know how apocryphal it is, or, you know, how true to life it is, but I have a sense that in the 19th century or the, late 18th century, there were these like gentlemen scientists that would just experiment on themselves. Like you read about these stories of these guys like were just taking mercury, just drinking mercury just to see what would happen, like operating on their own eyeballs, just to see what we can figure it out. And I love that Kuru Khan feels like that guy. He's just like, science is the most important thing. I am merely a vessel for
knowledge,
experimentation,
learning.
Yeah, totally fun.
I also like that, like the consistent thing about their conversations is there's always like at least one miscommunication. So he was like, he's like, hey, I've got a meeting. What are you doing? And he's like, well, I'm hanging upside down. But he says, like, is it important? He goes, no. Oh yeah. He says, I've got a meeting. What are you doing? And he says, is it important? And he's like, well, I guess you don't have to answer me. And he's like, what? No, you're meeting, idiot. It's like that like little moment of like how they're responding to each other is like such a character thing of like Brys's willingness to be he's sort of like courteous in a particular way that like gives this space.
He's formal and austere.
Yeah.
And Kuru Khan is always like, stop being an idiot.
Yeah, like from him just like immediately drinking that thing, there's like a sense of duty and like, oh, I assume that I'm in the wrong.
Yeah. That's
like very, very funny about this relationship when the TIDES seems to be so irreverent and strange.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, poor Brys, he's just constantly bumping into people he doesn't understand. It's like, just trying to be a good guy and do what's right, and everybody is complicated and not straightforward.
Yeah,
it's like Dudley Do-Right, just like I don't understand your strange, complicated ways.
Check this out.
Yeah, but I can use a sword real good. All right, so then he more Brys. He goes and meets with the Chancellor Tribun Noel. And Noel's like, hey, is the military ready to go? And he's like, ready to go. No problem. They're trained, ready to go. He's like, okay, cool.
He's like, but for war? And he's like, yes.
That's what militaries are for, dude.
Why would I lie about that?
Yeah. Yeah. And he's like, what about your brother Hull? He's like, what about my brother? That's none of your business. He's like, well, all right, but it's a strange interaction. Because
I
he's like, what about your brother Hull? He's like, none of your business. All right. I won't ask about that again. Bye. It's like,
well,
what?
I think there's like a slight nuance there. The scene, it is a strange interaction because the scene is so short. It's like
Yeah.
half a page,
Yeah.
and he comes in. He's like, "Is the military ready? Are you sure? Would you stand by that?" He's like, "I wouldn't have said otherwise if I
Yeah.
didn't feel it." And then he goes, "What about your brother Hull?" And he's kind of like, eye roll, because I think he's heard about Hull so many times that he actually kind of jumps ahead. And he's like, "Hull is not as important to this everything that you think it is." And he's like, "How dare you assume why I was asking? I will never ask you again. Get out of my sight."
Right.
And so he's like, "Okay, well now I don't have." Okay, well,
Yeah, he completely fails on like getting intel. I think the whole point of this scene, and even the last couple of scenes with Brys, are him just coming to the kind of what we were talking about of like, I don't understand him just coming to the realization that he's terrible at espionage. You know, he's like, I need to go talk to my brother because he's the good one that's good about this. And Brys is like, I will find out the information. And he walks in, he's like, I've told the truth and gained no information. I need to talk to my brother. He's the one that knows how to be duplicitous and
yeah.
subtle. Yeah. So he's like, he goes and visits, he decides he's going to go visit Tahal. And then we check back in with Tahal, who he's like, we're having banana leaves again for dinner.
I feel like the textures and the smells of like this quote unquote food that Bug prepares for him, I feel like I can see it. Him being like, we're sure this is like edible. I sure would love if we ate food. And Bug's like, I know. And he's like, how do we survive? And they're like, crazy, right? Anyway, eat up. And it's like this wet, thick leaf. I could like just, I could just picture it. I could picture it. It's so
washing
gross.
It down with cotton coffee or whatever it is, like cotton tea.
Yeah.
It's disgusting. But it's awesome because, you know, this is the dude that became the wealthiest guy and just gave all the money away. And he's more willing to live like this than have the wealth of all the people, you know, the city that values wealth above all. And he's more happy to live like this, even though it's ridiculous.
And what I think is like so charming about the way Erikson wrote this, like he has no money. He's not going to be eating nice meals, but like there's people with money that we don't see them eat ever.
Right.
So the fact that it's written in as like, it's an important part of his life that he's not eating or he's eating in these particular ways. It's like I like that it's specifically shown. I just
what he's willing to go through, what he's the lifestyle is,
and how little he actually seems to care.
Right. That's the key point.
Yeah. And the other thing I think is interesting because it keeps getting brought up and it happens right in the scene. They're chatting and he's like, all right, I'm going upstairs. Shirk's going to be here soon. I got to deal with our situation between the two horn dogs upstairs and like get to the heart of this. Tidy up. Yeah. He's telling Bug to tidy up at like the end of every scene. Do you have any sense that is that something that I'm like not thinking about? I feel like there's got to be.
Well, it's a running gag OCD. Because he says tidy up, and he always responds with, when I have time, I will. And their whole interaction is him giving him busy work to fill his time.
Yeah.
And then if I have time, I'll tidy up, and he never tidies up, right? It's like the manservant who doesn't do the one thing that a manservant should do, which is literally like keep the house, you know.
But also my impression is that they don't have anything. What would there possibly be to tidy?
Right, that too. I think that's.
But there's not like a deeper thing. That's not like a code that I'm missing. It's just a gag.
I don't think so. I think it's a running gag. I think
this book make me so sus. So like, what is that? You said it more than once. It's got to be important.
I just think it's a funny thing of him like, all right, do the one thing I asked you. He's like, I'll get around when I get around to it. And it never gets around to it, right? He just never.
It's cute.
And I also love this next part, which is the three horn dog ladies show up and are like, what are you even doing? We're just sitting around boning Ublala all day long. And what are you supposed to be doing? And they literally come to physically assault him.
Like menace him and
Well, I think
hurt him.
at the end, Bug's like, he should have a knife. Like they're gonna mess him up. And he just completely distracts them with minutia. He's just like, all right, here's a list of 400 people that you need to, put stock, buy all these. And they're just like, what? Okay. Tasks. Oh, all right.
Wait,
okay. All right. And they just completely forget they were going to beat him up.
They were like, oh, right. Wait. Where we're going to get the money for this? And he's like,
Right.
We might have some.
Right.
And then they're like, we have a peak already? What? And he's like, get the names. Goodbye.
Yeah. It just I think it shows his particular genius in being able to handle people that are used to just muscling their way through problems. And he just spins them with his mind. He's not going to be the guy like his brother Brys that's going to defeat them physically, but he's always able to outsmart the opponent. And it's such a cool way of dealing with, and they leave and he's like, Master, did you realize that they had knives? He's like, oh yeah, what do we have? He's like, spoons. We have wooden spoons. He's like, are we good? Are we awesome with the spoons? He's like, oh yeah, we got skill with spoons.
Yeah, we're totally good. I love that he's like, well, you had your knife too, I'm sure. And he's like, we don't have that. I also just love like the contrast of the scenes of like Brys failing to do this exact thing, like back to back. It's it's a beautiful juxtaposition. Yeah.
And then Tahal goes and finds Ubla Lapung just face down, just giving up on everything. I so vividly just could hear his voice like half muffled, like, I don't want to.
And I love Tahal like tries to like get on the ground and like physically roll him over. Cannot.
Cannot.
And then when Shirk shows up, he does roll over. And there's like one line that's like Tahal basically yelping as he's like being
he's
like
being
thrown squished by him. It's so good.
Yeah.
The staging of this.
I know. It's all so brilliant. And then we get some really interesting information about what's going on in the canal, because he's like, hey, the canal should be super deep. Yeah. The water, you should be 7 man heights of water.
And then
he's
barely reaching the surface if they reach their arms up.
Yeah. He's like, well, what happened when you walked on the bottom of the canal, Ublala? He's like, oh yeah, it wasn't that deep at all. It's like, well, what was down there? Oh, corpses. So there's literally so many bodies at the bottom of the canal that it's shallower.
Like distinct. He said that he could almost reach. It's not like shallower. It's like, verging on it's shallow.
Full of bodies.
Yeah. And then like, interesting, who's killing all these people? And part of me was like, no, people die there like all the time. Oh, they pull the bodies out after the drownings.
Yeah. They pull the bodies out.
Right. So never mind.
Somebody is like, hiding bodies down
all of them are all the time, but they want the coins back. So they pull it out.
I like the idea that this many people can disappear and nobody notices.
Enough people to be such a pile that's like 7 people high.
Yes.
Sorry, 6 people high. That's a lot of bodies.
That's a lot of bodies.
Bro.
So good. And I immediately got the image too. Like I revisited the idea of him walking along the bottom of the canal, and it's just squishing on piles of human remains. It's so foul.
I was picturing, like sand. He's like pushing off, but like stumbling through like a loose pile of bodies. Nasty.
So then they start formulating the plan to steal Garen Ebericht's money. Going to break in. Ublala is going to be the one to cause the diversion. And Shirk is just knows exactly how to play this big dumb moron. And she's like, I bet you can't jump on that roof silently. And he's like, I do it. I show you I can.
How quickly she was able to her being like, you can't. And him being like, I'll give you proof.
Oh,
I'm
yeah?
like, oh no, I'm
tell me what I won't do. I bet you can't. I bet you can't do it like I can do it. It's so funny. And then the fact that we cut away from that, where he's like, I could do it. And then we cut away to Brys going over to Tahal's. And he's like, walks up and like hearing this fight happening in the other house. And Tahal and Bug are just watching. He's like, hey, what's going on down there? He's like, Well, this big dumb idiot jumped and crashed their entire house, and now they're mad at each other.
Crumbled to the ground, and now he's like being like stuff being thrown at him, and they're like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, Ublala, he crazy." And he's like, "Ublala, that dude's a criminal." And he's like,
Yeah, criminal schmiminal.
"What's a criminal, really?"
Yeah, I just love the fact is like I will land on that roof silently, and it's so not silently that he literally crushed the roof.
Well, what I loved about it is that I actually think it was like he did land amazingly silently. They were like, "Wow, he really," and then the whole building came down because he's a massive man.
So good. And so Brys and Tahal start talking about like what's going on, and Tahal's like, "Hey, it's not your fault, man. You're in this bigger conspiracy and this crazy. There's factions. Let me list them for you. You're part of it." He's like, "I don't want to be part of it." It's like, you got no choice. You're part of it. You're in it.
Yeah.
Sorry. It's happening around you. He's like, "Oh, don't understand people and their ways." And then they start talking about Hull.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "Well, what do you think about Hull?" He's like, "Well, Hull's gonna try to bring down the entire city." And
It's interesting to me that both of them like knew that intrinsically.
yeah.
Because it's not like Hull's like announced his plans, as far as I know.
Right.
Everybody's just like, he's mad.
Well, yeah, I mean, they kind of know what he's gone through, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, the only reason he's back here is to enact vengeance and take everything down with him. And they come to the conclusion that someone's going to murder him before he gets a chance to do that. And it's such a cool interaction there where Tahal's like, "Brys, I know that you are more loyal to the king than you are even to your own family. That's just who you are. Don't worry. I got this. I will avenge Hull's." They're like talking about avenging his death when he hasn't even been killed yet.
Yeah.
So
it's
cool.
Like, it's like confidence in like the cruelty or the capabilities of the Lithari who are going out that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we have a really fun scene, which totally reminded me of a D&D campaign or tabletop. The prison break, not the prison break. It's a heist. It's a crazy, wacky break in, steal stuff. Somebody makes a diversion. Somebody else going in. I was like, I totally feel like I would play this. It's so good. Shirk stealthing her way into the estate while Ublala is just like, "You don't like me, I punch you."
And like they said this, or maybe it was this. It's like, "I'm not meat at me," or "No, don't be mean to me," or something like this. Like
he's
every
so
sentence,
belligerent,
like,
they can't even make out what he's yelling. So good. So good.
And like Shirk, because she was like a thief. That's why she was drowned in the first place, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so seeing,
well, she murdered her landlord, but yes, she's been a thief for a long time. Yeah.
But like I love like thief stuff, like heist things. That's why I love Lies of Loch Lamora so much. It's like, I just love this kind of stuff. So seeing the things that she's saying, and she's like, "Oh, there's going to be," and you see like a little idea of the security, like there's like a little glimpse into like this slice of this world.
Yeah,
the rich people have wards that they'll put out, but wards are for living people.
Yeah.
They have glass at the top of their railings, so somebody who had human hands or feeling hands put their hands up there, it would be bad. And she's like, "Whatever," peeling the shards of glass out of her palms and hopping over the way. And so seeing like what her distinct advantages are being dead, and then seeing just like how she navigates through this space of like recognizing the tripwires that are there, like seeing the different doors and being like, well, definitely the servants' quarters, they'll be crappy. No one's going to come through them because they don't care about servants because they're the Lethari. And then in the middle of everything, she's like, "Everybody's afraid of me." She's taking her sword out, and then she's like, "Wait a second." And goes back and she's like, "Hey man, I'm gonna hide here for a minute. You're gonna like this." It's like so great. Like not just a great strategy, but also like, worms gotta feed. Worms
I'm gonna
gotta
put
feed.
the lay in lay low.
That's good.
So funny to me. All of that, what you said is so awesome. You're so right. Like the mechanics of all of it and how she's the perfect thief because she's dead. It's just so great. But I do love the idea. I had it in this vivid image in my head of Ublala just like wildly causing this massive commotion, just belligerent, smashing things, running into people, knocking people over. And she's like, I'm gonna duck into this little alcove right here. Hey, buddy,
Hey.
I gotta wait this out. Might as well.
You look like you got parts.
Yeah. I mean, it's like what's that old the Snicker commercial? Gonna be here a while, or what's it? You know,
I don't. I feel like I have different Snickers commercials than you do because I'm Canadian.
Anyway.
And also I can't quite understand this relationship of the partner with the worm. Is it good for them? They all seem like they're leaving kind of drained in
Wait,
like a
who?
bad
What?
way. Like whoever she's sleeping with.
Oh.
I can't tell if they're like, this is great, or they're like, oh God, that was
I think
horrible.
I think they think it's great. I mean, the guy Prist, the servant who she just decides to. It says my reading of it was that he was very pleased at the end, and she's like, "Later, dude." He's like, "Oh, I'm exhausted." She's like, "Yeah, all right."
But then there's something about like him like mewling and whining, and is that just like her negative read on the man's pleasure, or is it like? It feels like everybody's kind of like, this is great, but it's also kind of bad.
Well, I think it's bad in the sense that it's more intense and takes and longer than they're up for. You know, that she's just like her appetites are a little more extreme than what they're prepared to handle.
Gotcha,
you know?
gotcha.
Yeah, that was my take at least.
Cool.
So 2 hours later, Ublala manages to get out of there somehow, and she emerges and tiptoes up to Garen Eberick's office and runs smack dab into another undead person.
So great.
Yeah.
How quickly they're like form this bond, and just like how immediately more despicable Eberick is.
Yeah.
She's like, all right, who are you? Like, what's your situation? He's like, I'm this guy. I forget his name. And she's like, his brother?
Harlist.
Harlist. She said that you like fell down the stairs or something like 10 years ago. And he's like, 10 years? Is it only that? Fell down the stairs, thrown off a balcony, maybe both.
Yeah.
And she's like, wow, pretty gross that he killed you. And then was like, you're not done working for me yet. And he's like,
right.
You know, I never really thought about it. It's pretty gross. And she's like,
that's the funniest part to me is that he's just like, no, my brother's just a solid stand-up dude. And she's like, but he murdered you. He's like, yeah. And now he's making you work for him. Yeah. Is my brother an a-hole? Is that
he
what I'm
the
learning
baddie?
right now?
Yeah. And then like her being like, well, I am here to like steal everything that he has. Do you want to like, are these wards going to trip for me? He's like, oh no, you're good. And he's like, I'll actually show you the way. And she's like, well, wouldn't this trip for you? Like, why didn't he have you like magically bound to him? He's like, I don't know, we're brothers. And you're like, all right, well, works for me.
I love what he's like, you're undead. You look fantastic. She's like, well, I could do this for you. He's like,
oh yeah.
Actually, what I would prefer is shave my teeth, sharpen up my nails, make me into a hideous monster.
Yeah. That like, can I get like the ghouls manicure? Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.
And then they're like, he doesn't keep anything around here.
The full
ghoul.
The full ghoul package, please.
Yeah, I want to maximize my ghoulish energy.
Yeah.
And then they go into his office and he's like, he spreads his wealth around so he doesn't like lose it all. And she's like, smart. And he's like, yeah, he only has like these writs. And she's like, by writs, do you mean box of diamonds? And he's like, oh, huh.
Yeah, I didn't know those were in there.
He's probably going to buy something. She's like, not anymore, baby.
Well, that's the interesting thing is we don't know what he was gearing up for something big too, evidently.
Yes.
And it's going to be interesting to see. Now he's probably going to be real ticked that That's not going to be able to happen.
Yeah. And some kind of double whammy too, because he lost that one guy who had all that money.
Yeah.
And then now he has this
the
box-
wager. Yeah.
Now this box of diamonds is going to be gone too.
So then we have one final scene in this chapter 10, where we check back in with Kettle feeding a body to the ground, and more creepy feelings about the people under there. And she drops a bomb to end the chapter, saying the house is already dead.
Ruh-roh.
Ruh-roh, big ruh-roh.
Big ruh-roh. And then we're like, anyway, next chapter. It's like, that feels like the biggest news. What if we just,
So I'm sure that's going to come to a head at some point.
I'm sure it's going to be fine.
All the horrible demons are coming out of the ground.
5 undead ? Toblikai hanging out down there, just building eons worth of vengeance.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
And spite. Yeah. Chapter 11 starts, we check back in with Udanas, who we haven't hung out with in a while. He's just sort of, just chilling, just watching stuff, thinking about stuff, being a little lovesick to the Feather Witch,
Isn't he like in the water?
That's the next time we see him. This one, he's sitting in a tree.
Oh, yeah.
He's sitting in a tree and he's like, oh, she doesn't like me. And maybe I shouldn't have been so nice to Roulade.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't really have a handle on where Udanas sits other than in a tree right now. Interesting character, though. Then
we're
I'm
up in this tree and a Feather Witch was here. We could be KISSING.
First would come love, and then would come marriage, and then I don't know, maybe a little baby. In a the next scene, we're hanging out with Saren Pedak and Baruch. They're talking about Hull, the fact that Hull is still missing, still out wandering, and they think he might be looking for relics in the ancient ruins that are nearby.
Yeah, they said something about, I assume that's like the crevice that they went to before.
Oh, you think the one that
they were like somewhere nearish
Sengar
by,
brothers went
there's
to?
like old relics, and I assumed that it was like maybe some sort of pseudo, I won't say like open secret, but he maybe has some piece of information because of these connections, and I assumed it was that crevice.
So you think he's looking for the same sword that Roulade has?
Not the sword, but they went to that crevice just to like get to show that information, right? Like Fear took them there to be like, I've known this for a while.
The other one.
Not the ice crevice, like the hole that has at the bottom.
They had a name for that thing.
The bowl,
sugar bowl, or something like that.
I think it's the sugar bowl.
No,
definitely the sugar bowl. They're like, sugar bowl, sugar daddy Scabandari's down there. He's dead, bro.
The Super Bowl. It was called the. The Tostitos.
Presented by Pizza Pops.
Anyway, so Hull is a big question mark as well. Still like not sure what that's all about. Everyone thinks he's going to get murdered, but he's off doing something, been off camera for quite a while.
Yeah. And he still is.
Still is.
Yeah.
And this wonderful scene here, like Baruch started the novel, I was like, this guy's a putz, right?
Yeah.
I don't like Baruch. And now I'm like, wise, insightful, kind of cool dude.
Who's still like just getting trashed at every opportunity.
Yeah, well, he's getting trashed, but like I kind of understand why now. He was stressed out. He's super stressed out. Does not want war. Trying to prevent war. Sees war coming on all sides. Like the only time he's calmed down is when he thought Mosag was not going to go to war. He's like, oh, thank God. Oh, thank God. And so and he has this wonderful moment where he just nails Saren Pedak and is like, you think you're a sensitive person, and you think that Hull is his failure is your failure, and that's who you are. And she's like, I'm going to look at my cup. I don't know. What
was that? Sorry.
I didn't hear you.
It's raining. The rain. It's pretty loud, actually.
Yeah. I loved that scene. That scene.
Me too.
So then the stuff gets really, really good. I mean, this we're back with Trull and Roulade and the awkward awkward scene with the Idur hanging out and waiting for something to happen. And Hanag is like, I want the sword. And Roulade is like, I will not give you that sword. In fact, I know what you've been up to, Hanan Mosaga. I know who promised you that sword. And I know that you made a pact with the very, very bad man that promised you that sword and that you were going to
Betray
them. Yeah. And he's like, me?
And he's like, but I actually love that bad man. And I would never betray that bad man.
Right.
And so
bad man wants me to have the sword, so you don't get it. What do
yeah.
you have to say to that? And he's like, nothing. He's like, all right, well, I'm going to heal my brother and show everybody how rad I am at magic.
Mhm.
The real Warlock King over here, buddy.
And they're like, you don't do magic. He's like, oh yeah, how's your hip? Boom.
Boom. Hip.
I'm hip with magic.
That's right. And then this amazing moment where he's like, I proclaim myself emperor. I'm not just going to be your new leader. I'm going to be the emperor of an empire. Well, it's kind of cool how that comes out. He's like, we're going to form an empire. He's like, well, but empires have emperors. He's like, yep, this guy with
So
the gold
funny that you
coin
said it.
thumbs.
That whole scene, Roulade is just like, coming out of death, and there's that scene between him and Udnas, and you like feel for him because you're like the pain he must be feeling, and it's so horrifying. But there's like this tenderness, and then Roulade's like, I actually came out more cringe than before, like
Yeah.
so, but like cringe in a different way, in that he is like horrifying. His personality has become from the edge of like, ugh, this guy's like an unblooded ween of a cocky showboat.
Yeah.
Jerk guy, but who's like obviously been treated poorly by his family forever because they weren't in war, and that's like their whole culture. So kind of everybody's fault if you think about it. To now being like covered in coins and being like, this is like great, isn't it?
Yeah.
Look at my cool armor. And like the scene starting off with him being like talking about his wheezing breath and like barely able to even squeeze air out from the weight of the coins, to him like hoisting the sword and strutting around. And there's like some obviously magical strength that he's infused with to even carry the weight of all this garbage that's on him.
Yeah.
It's like, so again, like this horrifying transition from a moment of pity where we suddenly care about him, where it feels too late to care about him. And then it's clear that it is definitely too late to have that care for him in the way that the Sengar family and the entire sort of Eater people had. He's like, he's too far gone, and now he's taken over.
And then, he's like, I'm going to be emperor. And his brother Fear goes and kneels before him. And then Hanang Mosag kneels, which was like the moment where I was like, what is even happening right now?
I thought he was going to like chop his head off or something, but it was like, and then everybody does, obviously, like the
game recognized game. You know what I'm saying?
the leader of everybody does it, and like a symbolic leader of just like a good dude in the village does it, and everybody's like, well, who are we?
Yeah.
And yeah.
So good.
So good.
Then good. I mean, an amazing, it felt like this, oh no, here we go. Roulade, evil emperor, who knows? Then we cut over to Udnas, who's now standing in the sea and is like, why even go on? I'm going to go drown in the sea. And is plucked out of the sea by the Wyval, who's like, no, bad person, bad slave.
Stop that. Stop that. No undertows for baby.
Yeah.
Get back on land.
He's like, oh, I can't even murder myself. I can't even commit suicide.
But then was there a real Wyval? Because he was like, it pierces my shoulders. But then his clothes aren't pierced and he just has bruises. So is it an actual Wyval or was it himself?
I think that will
Become clear.
meant to be unclear. I took it as a real sort of magical intervention, not just sort of his own delusion, but I took it as an actual third party intervening Wyvil style.
Oh, a Wyvil style intervention. Classic.
Yeah,
A classic.
classic Wyvil.
One of the
style.
3 classic intervention
Yeah.
styles.
Did you know that the secret menu at In-N-Out, you can order Wyvil style? Very good. It's good.
That's a
Sauteed
Californian
onions
joke.
and
That was a Californian joke for the
That was.
Californians out there.
It's just for you Californians. So then Hulad comes up and is like, "Yo, you're not going to believe this. Hey, were you trying to drown yourself? Nope.
No.
Okay, anyway, you're not going to believe this. Featherwitch tried to cast the tiles and she couldn't. That's not good.
They're closed to her. The holds are closed.
The holds are closed.
Ruh-roh.
Sorry. Open. So he's like, I'm going to go back to bed. I can't handle this. I'm going to bed. Back to Saren Pedak. It's been half a day since everybody kneeled in front of Rulad, and they're still kneeling.
Yeah, they're still in the auditorium.
Yeah. And there's this funny moment where Baruch is like, make sure you know who to acknowledge first. And he's like, you don't want to offend anybody. Make sure you acknowledge the one who's likely to be offended. She's like, all of them. I guess I'll just look in between because they're all going to be offended.
And he's like, if you bow between them, they'll think you've lost your mind.
Yeah.
And it's like, I was like, ugh, can you imagine?
Yeah.
I'm so glad I don't live in that kind of exact type of society. If you greet in the wrong order, ugh.
And then your head comes off.
Yeah.
The Lothari delegation, this is what we're talking about. The Lothari delegation has arrived. They're coming, Prince Quillis and Niphidos. And I love how this is illustrated as well, how just immediately everybody gets the true power structure here, where Prince Quillis is so concerned about showing his power that everybody realizes he has none, you know?
Just the way they come out from the boat, that like Prince Quillis is like lifted over the waves and Niphidos just hops in and like struts
just
over.
strolling through. He's like, he doesn't care about the pomp and circumstance. He's actually concerned about real power,
Problems?
real affect, you know, like, and everybody gets it. Like everybody gets it. Like, oh, that's the guy to talk to, not this idiot, you know? Yeah. So good. And then, they kind of lay it all out. I was actually kind of surprised that Saren is just like, well, here's what happened. He died and then came back and now he's emperor. And it's real messed up. And she just like spills the beans to everybody, you know?
Yeah. And I also just like how it sort of comes to pass like immediately when we thought like the biggest drama was that they had like the fight in the street at the time.
Yeah.
About the sword during death. And then being like, and you let strangers see. And that matters.
Yeah.
And at the time I was like, yeah, but they're like in your village for this thing anyway. Right. But then how quickly she was able to like relay that information. And even though things have changed because Rulad has come back to life, it's still like important information for them to have. And it was like, oh, that was a juicy tidbit that you wouldn't have wanted those people to see. It was great. Yeah. Yeah. I liked
And it's awesome too how Niphidos is just like gets it immediately and understands what's important and what's not. And Prince Quillis is like, what? Why? He's like, no. Here's the important stuff.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, well, things have changed. And he's like, you got to choose sides, Saren. And she like thinks to herself, well, I guess I already have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
Yeah. And in like how they're walking and they're like, all right, let's walk and talk. Let's go get out of the rain. And just like how like, I would say obviously calculated it is that Niphidos is like, Saren, let's walk over this way. And they're like already walking, linking arms towards the destination. And then her sitting there being like, well, I'm linking arms with you walking through this world. It's just it's very good showing, not telling.
Indeed.
Love it.
Then we're back with Udanas, and he's woken up by Wither. It's like, you got to do stuff. You got to go. You got to make sure that Rulad
You're his guy
values
now.
you. Yeah, you're the guy. So I don't want to be the guy. You're the guy. And then he's also like, hey, remember that when that crazy chick like stole your seed? That was weird, right?
Why do you think she wanted that? Anyway, get out there, champ.
Anyway, keep going. I was like, that real non sequitur with her.
Yeah.
You know?
Why do you think she wanted that? That was like assault.
That was an odd moment. Let's be fair. That was real weird for everybody.
And then he also brought up like Dapple. He's like, "Who's the dappled one?" I'm like, "Wasn't it Dapple?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody in the comments is going to be like, "It actually wasn't." I'm sorry.
I know. I'm
but
sure.
Whatever.
Anyway, Udanas goes to where the Edur are kneeling in front of Rulad, and he's like, "I heard your summons." And Rulad's like, excellent, my summons. Lying.
Yeah. Well, no, Rulad was like, "Did you get my summons? I was beckoning you." And he's like,
right.
"Totally.
Definitely. Yeah, it wasn't a demon that told me to come here. It wasn't a Wyval that woke me up."
Yeah.
And he
announces that the delegation is there.
That's right. Yeah.
So he's there, like, somebody has to go tell him. They're like, you're the guy. You got to tell him.
Yeah.
Like, the delegation's here, and he's like, great, send them in.
Right.
And I don't know if they'd shown it earlier in the book, but Udanas being like, okay, I got to back out of the whole citadel, and the change, like, again, like an immediate change of leadership style. Basically, he's like, I'm not scared of your back.
Yeah, you can turn your back to me, dude. It's
fine. Go on.
And
he's like, okay, and like turns
coins off my skin. You know what I'm saying?
I've always said that.
Ain't no gold off my nose. And so they bring in the delegation, everybody, the whole gang, and Prince Quillis attempts to be awesome, and
there was an attempt at being cool.
Yeah. And tries to negotiate with Hanan Mosag about, like, well, you owe us money, and we this whole it was hard for me to parse the, like, because it's so everybody is saying the opposite of what should be true, which is, we murdered all your people, but you owe us money.
Well, it's like they'd written the deal already to be in this specific way. So it doesn't matter where the seals came from necessarily, even if we owed you some sort of recompense for doing an illegal harvest. The deal that we previously had was only about the price of the seals. Yeah. And so because you stole the harvest from us, you actually owe us the money for the harvest, even though we illegally harvested it.
Right.
And they're like, so funny, but we actually didn't take the harvest. We only punished you. So we don't owe you anything. And you only owe us the fees for your illegal harvesting. And they're like, well, we didn't expect you to be so wasteful.
It's a really cool moment. And it's neat because Hanan Mosag has shown fealty to Rulad and sort of stepped away from this leadership role, but he still kind of steps up and owns that moment. He's still really capable and talks circles around the prince.
Yeah.
Which I thought was neat.
I thought it was neat, and I also thought it was interesting, like, because Hanan Mosag, when you're on the ships and Troll and Fear are like, that was not our magic.
Yeah.
And what happened there was not, it was like a ruthless slaughter. It wasn't like a righteous taking, and we wasted the harvest. And that makes it that much more despicable. At the time, you're like, ugh, that is despicable. But then seeing Hanan having like seen through the ruse of why they were maybe doing that to come to this thing to be like, no, we're not indebted to you for X,
Right.
Y, and Z. It's not like what he did was like suddenly good, but it was strategic and not just purely sinister, which is what it felt like before. But it was like he saw through the lethargy intent with doing that fake harvest in the first place. And so it just sort of makes it all the more like, oh, you were being a weird, sinister guy, but almost for like no reason in a way. Like
Yeah.
you could have just like let us in so that we wouldn't have been so sad and like mistrustful of you in a specific way. It was like an interesting, maybe that wasn't always the case, but it seemed like he somehow saw through to what the Lethrine were planning with that action.
Yeah. Interesting. The other thing I forgot to bring up is the fact that Roulade, during that whole like I'm going to be your emperor scene, completely reveals to everybody that the wraiths aren't Idur. That they're Tystandi. And he's like, BT dubs, everybody. All these wraiths that you thought were your ancestors, guess what? They're not. Your ancestors are on a different plane altogether because they never belonged here.
Yeah, they're gone.
Yeah.
What happens when we die? Nothing. We leave. That's it.
Yeah. But all these people that have been infused in my trees and like, I really like, they're the people we murdered.
Yeah.
We conquered.
And it's interesting because we don't get like reactions from anyone.
Yeah.
We're so focused on Roulade, we don't even get to like do the look around and be like, does anybody think that was messed up to hear? Like anybody, everybody okay? Oh, you kneeling? We're
all kneeling. We're kneeling. Down. That's what we're doing. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I was so glad that you brought that up.
Yeah. I'm sorry to have forgotten it at the moment. So then we have this other amazing moment of power where Roulade's like, okay, one last thing, Fear, I'm going to need a gift from you. Yeah.
As soon as he started saying that stuff, I was like, oh no. Oh no.
First guy to kneel. I mean, I hate to use this word. I really do. But Fear is the ultimate cuck, right?
Yo, Fear.
I don't like that word. But just first guy to kneel. First guy to be like, bro, it's all yours. He's like, yeah. But like one more thing, bro. What? Anything. I kneeled. I'm ready. Like what? He's like,
his name is Fear because he's fearful.
Yeah.
I'm going
to need your lady. I'm going to need your lady. And I need you to gift her to me. It's so yucky. And Mayan comes in. She knows what she's got to do. And it's cool that Troll is like, he sees the
distaste.
Duty on her face and the horror of it. Yeah.
And he's like, oh man, I hope Fear, stop looking at the ground. Stop kneeling. Look up at her. Look up at her. So at least you know.
Yeah.
And then he's like, okay, I think Fear saw that was occurring.
Yeah.
But it like,
he's even like, don't do this. Roulade, don't do this. He's like, I will slice your face. I will. Yeah. He's like, do not tempt me. Pretty. So
that was like the ultimate cringe moment. As soon as he's like, daddy need Prezi. It was like,
so gross.
No,
it's so
man.
gross. And he's like, I will murder my own brother if you say one more word about how I'm taking my other brother's lady. Yucky.
It's like, it does feel like in this moment, it's like Roulade has fully become the person that everybody forced him to be.
Right.
In a way, like just their constant shaming of him, their constant yelling at him, their constant saying you're going to be the first person to die, and he was like, all like, or like him saying, I'm going to be this sacrifice, and nobody denying that. It's just like his life circumstances are leading to this spot that it's like he could have chosen to a higher road, but it feels like the higher road was never he was never guided towards it,
right?
And so it just feels like he's come into this destiny that was molded for him by the culture he was surrounded in. And it just feels so gross.
Well, Erikson talks about these novels as being tragedies in a large sense. And I think that's Roulade's tragedy. It's that classic, Shakespearean tragedy of your fate is sort of is ingrained in your nature, right?
Yeah.
You are trapped by your own by your own circumstance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Real nature/nurture situation happening.
Right. Yeah. And then the last thing we end on with this chapter is Saren, talking to Udnas, says that Rulad has taken Mayan, and Udnas says it's time to prepare for war.
Yeah.
It's like, Rutro. Also, by the way, there's a Azath house that's going to empty out oh boy.
That's going to be fine.
It's going to be
That's
fine.
Gonna be fine.
Fine. And that's the end of this sub-book. So we start a new book inside this novel next week. I'm very excited.
Very exciting. It is so interesting to come into this book, and like, even I think the last time we met, we were talking about like the ice chapters of like going through and getting the sword in the first place, and being like, oh, it's because Troll's doubting that he's going to be strapped to the rock. Like, we're basically constantly trying to see like, what's the thing that's going to get him strapped to this rock by his brothers,
right.
And like how quickly in 2 chapters, like, oh no, I think we get even a clearer picture of why he's getting strapped to that rock.
Yeah. It's because Tyrant now rules the empire that he was in.
Yeah. And it's also like, I like seeing how like we're with the Adur, which have only really been shown as villains throughout the rest of the novel so far.
Yeah.
And so getting here being like,
I get it.
And knowing we're so far in the past.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah. We are at the start of our villain arc. And
he's literally telling them, I'm going to take back our, what we is ours,
Yes.
All right. So I have a number of fantastic passages. I had a hard time limiting myself this week. There were so many great passages.
Me too. I have to try and find a couple. I'm not going to pull the ones that I wrote that like I've highlighted like literally like a whole page and a half. But I have oh, interesting. I like this. I didn't actually realize this is like very directly connected with like what we were just talking about. But it's Brys and Tahal talking together. I'm going to make sure I'm in the right chapter. One sec. It's 10 and 11.
Yeah.
11. Yeah, this is chapter 10. Yeah, okay. So Brys and Tahal talking together when he goes over and he's like, I don't know how to do these things.
Yeah.
Brys sighed and returned his gaze to the city. Outwardly, we seem so different, the 3 of us. And so we are, Tahal replied. It comes down to methods, and we each walk unique paths. At the same time, alas, we must all live with an identical legacy, a particularly unpleasant inheritance. He shrugged, then pulled up his sagging trousers. 3 stones in a stream, all subjected to the same rushing water, yet each shaped differently depending on its nature.
So good.
Which is kind of like, the circumstance of like these Sengar bros too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it is nature versus nurture, right? It's like, what is that? What is that? Why does the same stream shape the rocks differently? I love it. I want to start with one that's just awesome description, just like masterful setting of a feeling in a place. And I just love the detail, the imagery here. The air was warming, yet still fresh after the rain. Wet dogs nosed the rubbish in the settling puddles. Cats chased the cockroaches that had swarmed up from the drains. A beggar had found a sliver of soap and stood naked beneath a stream of water coming from a cracked eaves trough, working up a murky lather while he sang a lament that had been popular 100 years ago. Residents had taken advantage of the unexpected downpour, emptying chamber pots from their windows rather than carrying them a few dozen paces to the nearest communal dump hole. As a result, some of the pools held floating things, and the streams in the gutters carried small, fly-blown islands that collected here and there in buzzing rafts that bled yellowy brown slime. It was a fine evening in the city of Letheris. How amazing is that?
So good. So
Just
good.
like this kind of beauty and disgust all at once. It's foul and it's kind of magical all at the same time.
I mean, I feel like it is so evocative of like when I was a kid and you read about like medieval times and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, princesses and castles
Yeah.
and all those things. But then they're like, and here's a depiction of the castle. Here's the wall where they dumped all their feces. And it's like,
Yeah.
what? It's like, yeah, they didn't
Yeah.
have plumbing. Crazy. They all died of cholera. It was like, it is that juxtaposition of this magical
Yeah.
time that like Disney stories are based off of, plus
Yeah.
the realities of.
It was so fresh and beautiful, and a guy was washing himself under the rainwater, and also people used that opportunity to dump their poop right out the window. It's so good.
It's so good. Oh gosh. I collected one, it's a little bit longer, of Unas in the tree.
Yeah.
Starting sort of like this pontification that he's having just about where he's at. Drawn to the shoreline as if among the host of unwritten truths an immortal soul could be, as if among the host of unwritten truths an immortal soul could be found a recognition of what it meant to stand on land's edge, staring out into the depthless unknown that was the sea. The yielding sand and stones beneath one's feet whispered uncertainty, rasped promises of dissolution and erosion of all that was once solid. In the world could be assembled all the manifest symbols to reflect the human spirit, and in the subsequent dialogue was found all meaning, every hue and every flavor rising in legion before the eyes, leaving to the witness the decision of choosing recognition or choosing denial. Udadas sat in a half-buried tree trunk with the sweeping surf clawing at his moccasins. He was not blind, and there was no hope for denial. He saw the sea for what it was, the dissolved memories of the past, witnessed in the present and fertile fuel for the future, the very face of time. He saw the tides in their immutable susurration, the vast swish like blood from the cold heart moon, a beat of time measured and therefore measurable. Tides one could not hope to hold back.
That's just exquisite.
Ah,
I had that same sections highlighted.
so good.
It's so good. The prose is just, it's poetry. It's unbelievable. This is, one of the things I'm enjoying most about Midnight Tides is this sort of rumination on capitalism in a lot of ways. And this Lotharia is a stand-in for, unfettered greed. And I love this section. For all the explosive growth driving the kingdom, it seemed an ever greater proportion of the population was being left behind, and that was troubling. At what point in the history of Lotharis, he wondered, did rampant greed become a virtue? The level of self-justification required was staggering in its tautological complexity, and it seemed language itself was its greatest armor against common sense. You can't leave all these people behind. They're outside the endless excitement and lust, the frenzied accumulation. They're outside and can only look on with growing despair and envy. What happens when rage supplants helplessness? What happens indeed?
Yeah. I feel like there are sections of the book that I could just read and then put the book down and just think about that.
Yeah.
And think about the applications to,
That's
current
what's so
life.
extraordinary about this series. I just can't get over the insight.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you a little thing I probably shouldn't say, but I started this week. We had an extra week off, and so I was like, I started this week a new audiobook, another fantasy novel that I've been very much looking forward to reading, and that has been highly recommended. And people are rate it very, very highly, and I am enjoying it. But I had this sensation. I'm like 8 chapters in, and I'm like, I think Erikson may have ruined me. I think he may have ruined me too. Like, it's a fun, interesting world. It's a cool tale so far, and I'm sure I'll talk about it at some point. And I don't mean to disparage it in any way, because I'm enjoying it. But like, this is just a completely different level of,
Yeah.
insight and depth and articulation of these notions. It's like, anyway, it's hard.
I feel like between chapters have been reading the Murderbot Diaries.
Yeah, those are
books.
so fun. Those are so fun.
My gosh. And I feel like the shift in language and tone and like genre is like helps. But I feel like taking on like another like fantasy genre book that has like a serious undertone to it is like off. It's off the table.
I usually
distance.
I usually try to pair like a sci-fi with a fantasy, so it's really different.
Yeah.
But I've been wanting to read this, and I decided to try it, and it's fun. Like I said, anyway, neither here nor there. But
I'm sorry. I every time we talk, I'm trying to like write questions that I think that would be good to ask Steven for the thing, and I'm always like,
how do you feel about destroying everybody else's writing? I have another quote. Do you have any more?
I do.
Okay.
This deeply great. I have like such a bad memory. If I don't write it down instantly, I will never remember it. Yeah. So this one is like, I like this setup, and then there's like a nice spot right after that. But this is Saren talking to Baruch.
Okay.
About like the sword. Well, if not Ankadu, then who? That sword came from somewhere. I don't know. Nor does it sound as if you even care. This listlessness ill suits you, Aquitor. It's not listlessness, Baruch. It's wisdom. I'm surprised you can't tell the difference. Is it wisdom taking the life from your eyes, the sharpness from your thoughts? Is it wisdom that makes you indifferent to the nightmare miracle we witnessed today? Absolutely. What else could it be? Despair? And what have I done that? What have I that's worthy of despair? I'm hardly the one to answer that. True, but I'll try anyway. Then there's like a little gap between the next two, but Baruch being like, let me mansplain to you instantly. Just like that, like I cannot possibly, but I will definitely. And what he says is, it strikes me you're the sensitive type, Aquitor, which probably is a quality for someone in your profession, but you're not able to separate business from everything else. Sensitivity is a pervasive kind of vulnerability, after all. Makes you easy to hurt. Makes the scars you carry liable to open and weep at the slightest prod.
I feel like that's me. Me, nailed. Me, too sensitive. It's so funny that you did that section, because I'm literally, my next quote is how she responds to that.
I highlighted the whole thing and then I cut it back.
This is how we cheat, is that you do half of it and I'll do half of it. Because I love how she, he ends by saying like, why not blame yourself? Why not? It's easier. And this section starts with, she had chosen to stare at the bitter dregs in the cup, embraced by her hands, sometime during the course of Baruch's pronouncements, eyes tracking the battered rim, then out to the fingers and thumbs, swathed in stained, scarred leather, flattened pads polished and dark seams fraying, the knuckles stretched and gnarled. Somewhere within was skin, flesh, muscle, tendon and callus, and bone. Hands were such extraordinary tools, she mused. Tools, weapons, clumsy and deft, numb and tactile. Among the tribal hunters, they could speak, a flurry of gestures eloquent in silence. But they could not taste, could not hear, could not weep. For all that, they killed so easily. While from the mouth, sounds issued forth, recognizably shaped into meanings of passion, of beauty, of blinding clarity, or muddied, or quietly cutting, murderous and evil, sometimes all at once. Language was war, vaster than any host of swords, spears, and sorcery. The self waging battle against everyone else. Borders enacted, defended, sallies and breaches, fields of corpses rotting like tumbled fruit. Words ever seeking allies, ever seeking iconic verisimilitude in the heaving press. And, she realized, she was tired of it all. Peace reigned in silence, inside and out, in isolation and exhaustion.
So good.
It's
so
like,
good.
you know that moment when someone's saying something that's uncomfortable to you and you're just like, man, look at my hands.
Yeah.
Those are weird. Hands are weird. Oh, everything sucks. I'm just going to be quiet, and it's so good. And then like the scene ends with him saying, why do you say nothing, Equator?
Yeah.
It's just like, the last 3 paragraphs, I couldn't possibly tell you why I'm saying nothing. It's so good.
It's
So
excellent.
good.
So good. Book good.
Book good. Thank you for being with us. Your viewership and support, also good.
Yeah. Thanks for your patience while we deal with life and have random non-weeks like last week. Really appreciate y'all hanging around.
We try to minimize those, but they're going to happen from time to time, and we appreciate your understanding and, as Lana said, your patience. Please do send us questions, send us comments, let us know what you're thinking, what you're doing, what your 3 books in solitary confinement are, et cetera, et cetera.
What your topics would be for us to chat about at the beginning of the show.
We would love it. And we can't wait for next week. 3 chapters next week. 3.
When the world's too dark of a place to be, and you need an escape from reality, open up those pages, it's sci-fi or fantasy, whatever genre you please. And join a book club, 'cause you won't read it on your own. Join a book club, so you'll be held accountable. It's just a means to an end, but you're doing it with the